What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Turn on the Jets Live. I'm your host, Steven Zantz, joined by my co-host, Zantz Russo. We're back from the bye. I know we didn't do a show last week. We apologize to everybody who was on pins and needles waiting for us. But Russo, how are you?
I'm good, man. I know it's been personally, I think for both of us, it's been crazy busy, but I think that's a good thing for the most part. But yeah, happy to be back. I'm back and better than ever, man. Let's kick this off. Jets are 3-3 out of the bye week. I think all of us would have been happy with that, even if Aaron Rodgers were here. Schedule lightens up. Let's see where it takes us. Let's start with getting the W against the Giants this weekend, right?
Yeah, that's the hope. I mean, the Jets are coming off one of their best wins in, I don't know, 5-10 years. It's definitely the best win of the Robert Saleh era. We never got a chance to recap it, but since it's been over a week already, I don't really want to keep going about it, but I'm excited. The one thing I'm thinking about though in my head is just this is such a post bye week, ultimate high letdown for the Jets. Like we've seen it time and time again. They've had a monster win and then they come back down to earth. And I think I actually said this leading into the Eagles game. If the Jets found the way to win the game, they would come out of the bye and lose to the Giants.
You did.
I'm not trying to speak that to existence, but at the same time, it's like you need to prove that consistency. And that's something that the Jets really haven't had, I would say, since they won 5 straight games in 2015. But if you really want to go to sustained success, it was probably 2009, 2010 when they're actually winning and beating good teams on the regular. But yeah, it's a weird spot because the Giants, who I'm happy they actually won against Washington. I didn't want them to be a desperate team who was 1-6 coming into this game. It makes me feel a little bit better that they got that schneid off their back. But how are you feeling about this? Do you feel confident? Do you feel like, as a Jets fan, we're always set up for failure in these situations? What do you think?
Yeah, I think the go-to term is always cautiously optimistic. I think the Jets are the better team. There's no question in my mind that they are. I think on both sides of the ball, they're just simply better. Nothing about the Giants really scares me. It's just a matter of if the Jets have that kind of classic letdown that they've been known to have. Like you said, either coming out of the bye or coming out of a big win, which now they're coming out of both. So, but I just, I have to believe that history doesn't really mean anything, that this team is different. And I think they're resilient. I think there's something here that they're building upon. And I think they match up well with the Giants. And yeah, I mean, listen, give the Giants credit. Buffalo's a tough team. Washington has proven to be scrappy as well. They played them both tough, but in both of those games, they put up 9 and 14 points. And I don't think that either Washington or Buffalo's defense is of the caliber that the Jets is. Yeah. So that's where I think it kind of points. Listen, if the Jets can get to 17, 20, I'd feel safe here. But I really, I don't think that the defense will let us down. Have we gotten official word if it's Daniel Jones or Tyrod yet?
So I did see, I think about 2 hours ago, that it's officially Tyrod Taylor, which I think I don't think I'm in a minority here, but believe it or not, I think a lot more Jet fans would have liked to see Daniel Jones. Number one, because he has been playing well this year, but number two, Tyrod's looked pretty competent the last 2 weeks. Even when they lost to the Bills, he's moving the ball down the field, and their offense has looked a lot better. I know they only scored, like you said, 14 and 9 points, but they're at least moving the ball between the 20s, where it seemed like they were basically unable to even move the ball. I think against Miami, their only touchdown was a pick 6, and then they weren't scoring, I guess, against Seattle, and I can't even remember all their opponents. But to me, I feel a little nervous because of the 2015 Week 17 game against Buffalo when Tyrod beat us. But it really wasn't Tyrod. It was more like Fitz throwing the game away because we had a chance, and Fitz obviously threw 3 interceptions, and it was miserable in that second half. But I will say Tyrod doesn't scare me as much with his legs the way Daniel Jones does. I think Daniel Jones is way more lethal with his legs, but I think Tyrod could beat you more with his arm. Not necessarily deep down the field. I think Jones can actually sling it a little bit. But I think Tyrod's going to make the safe throws and operate the offense the way Dable would like it to be operated. I think you need to ensure that you're not getting Darren Waller open in the middle of the field. It seemed like he was in the witness protection program up until last week, and now that Tyrod knows to find him, I think that's been an area of weakness for the Jets. I think that they've had trouble with some tight ends. But to me, the biggest thing for the Jets is, can you stop Saquon Barkley? The Jets have not been great against the run. That's been one of their, weaknesses on a very, very strong defense that had an unbelievable performance against Philadelphia 2 weeks ago. But Saquon is really the engine that drives what the Giants do. Even when Daniel Jones is back there, if Saquon's cooking, their offense is going to score some points. I would say, you can't expect them to do 1 yard like in 2019, but if you could keep him under, like 70, and you're not letting him beat you like through the air as well, because that is something that he does extremely well, is catch the ball in the backfield. I do think the Jets defense has, the capability to really keep this Giant offense in check. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, yeah, I think Joe Caporoso said it best on Badlands, that he still has PTSD from 2015 and Tyrod Taylor. But I think we quickly, we go back to that, but we kind of forget, 2016, I think we kind of had his number, and that was a very down year for the Jets. And was it 2016? Yeah, I believe it was 2016. And then the Baker year, right? The Jets had Tyrod's number when he was in Cleveland, and then after that, Baker came in and did us and got the first win for Cleveland in a year and a half. But
yeah,
either way, I don't think either DJ or Tyrod really scare me. I think you're absolutely right that Saquon's kind of the one person that you really have to worry about. But I think he's the catalyst to get it going. But again, he's a difference maker on a Giants offense that just really doesn't scare you overall. And the Jets defense has been so good this year, and now their secondary is getting healthy. Their defensive line, I mean, Bryce Huff and Jermaine Johnson are playing at insane levels right now. So I think those can be the difference makers. So the question for me really goes to the other side of the ball, with, where is the Jets offense developing? Were they able to hit the reset button or find out some things? Nathaniel Hackett, was he able to discover some things with their red zone offense to really be able to take the offense from a C- level to a C+ or a B-? If they can't, because between the 20s, the Jets offense is moving the ball well, right? And they've kind of they've jumped over that hurdle. Now it's time to get the ball in the end zone. I think the story in Denver was when they got to the red zone, I think they got too simplistic. They were run, pass, didn't get in. I think the story against Philly was they got themselves into the red zone. They shot themselves in the foot. Now, some of that was questionable officiating. Other things were just penalties, play calls, whatever. Can they figure those things out to get those threes into sevens? And if they can get 2 touchdowns this game, I think that the Jets are going to win it relatively easily. So I start off by saying I'm cautiously optimistic, then I sound pretty confident here. So I'm contradicting myself a little bit, but that's just, there's not much about the Giants that really, truly scare me here.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I will say that does scare me a little bit is the amount that they do blitz, especially with how the Jets' offensive line looks from the last time we saw it. I don't expect Joe Tippmann to play. I believe he was rolled out. I'm not 100%, but he has been practicing all week. Obviously, no ABT is pretty scary as well. But you got to hope that, Lakin continues to play well, that Schweitzer can fill in and do what he did against Philly. Obviously, Becton continuing his really strong play after obviously missing the better part of 2 years. But that's the thing. If they're going to be blitzing a lot, you got to make sure that Zach is hitting those quick throws to get the ball out of his hands. That's been something that's been tough for him, but we have seen improvements in that area this year. And I think that'll set the Jets up to have, easy completions. And I think, Tyler Conklin has to be a beneficiary of that, because that's always really his safety valve when, things are kind of chaotic. Mm-hmm. I do hope that we see Izzy Abanikanda. I don't think that that's going to happen. I think it's more likely that we actually see a guy like Brownlee, because Randall Cobb is trending to not play. I mean, I don't know for certain. But I want to see Gibson more involved in the offense. And I know there's been a lot of discourse, especially since the McCole Hardman trade, which we haven't talked about either, since we didn't do a show last week. But Gibson obviously had that amazing, game-winning return against Buffalo, but he hasn't done that much on offense. I think he's accumulated 30-something yards between receptions and a couple handoffs. So I am interested to see what he could do in a bigger role if he did take Cobb's spot in the lineup this weekend. But I also don't want to, crown him as this amazing player, because he's been fine. I mean, he's doing his job in the return game, and that's definitely helped the Jets, secure good field position. But he hasn't really been trusted to, or really, that hasn't really been put on his plate to carry that slot position role. I'm interested to see, if Dalvin Cook is completely phased out. I know he he was a little bit upset yesterday when he was talking to the media about his reduced role. But, when you look at it, I know you had that, I think you had that tweet about it. It's like, it's pretty obvious why you're not getting a lot of carries. You don't have a lot of juice, even though I've seen him actually look a little bit better the past 2 games. I think against Denver and Philadelphia, he showed a little bit more. But again, he's not showing the ability to get first downs. He's not really been adequate in pass protection. So I do want to see more of Izzy, but I will say if it comes between Michael Carter and Dalvin Cook, I'm going with Dalvin Cook just because Michael Carter's been horrible this season. And it's a shame because it was that's a player that I really liked during his rookie year and going into 2022. And I just feel like ever since that play in Buffalo, when he fumbled, when the Jets were really in pole position to maybe steal that game, he has not looked the same. And I know he's been, a little bit moody on the sidelines, but it's like, if you're going to complain about playing time, you have to catch the ball when it's thrown your way. I know that was a long-winded answer. I talked about a couple things, but what are your thoughts on the running backs and really how the offense will look as a whole against that blitz?
Yeah, I mean, you go back to your original point and how Zach Wilson will look against the blitz. I think Zach Wilson has obviously shown significant improvement over the course of the last 3 weeks, right, since the New England game.
Yes.
The one thing that you could point to where he's obviously gotten better with turnovers. The one that you could point to that he's still struggling with is identifying or feeling the pressure and taking sacks that he probably doesn't need to take. So that's what really scares you with this wing defense and then bringing the house. The other part of it is, I think historically, and I don't have any stats on this, but it just feels like he gets a lot of balls batted down at the line. So you figure if they're blitzing in your face, like that could be another thing to watch out for. If they could set up a screen game, so you made the point, to Brees, to Conklin, like that's the way to circumvent the blitz, and that's the way to make it a lot harder on that defense and make them think twice before doing it, again and again and again. And if they can do that, if they can set up the screen game where Conklin and Brees are the beneficiaries of that, then obviously that'll go a long way towards the Jets offense kind of getting going and maybe being able to take deeper shots to Garrett Wilson and Lazard. From a running back standpoint, I think the perfect scenario is it sucks because I'm with you on Michael Carter. I was very high on him in his rookie year. I thought he had a great rookie season.
It's a shame.
I thought he had big plans for year 2, and it does seem like it just fell off the cliff after that Buffalo fumble. But I think really the perfect scenario is you trade away Michael Carter to a team that needs him where they can utilize him. You activate Izzy. You have Brees as your clear number 1, Izzy as your 2, and Dalvin as your third down running back. From Dalvin's standpoint, like, is he frustrated? Yeah, I get that. Do you have to be vocal about that with the media? No, I don't think so. To say that you need some more carries to get going, well, you know what? There's a guy in the backfield that's the clear-cut number 1 and top 3 running back in this league that clearly doesn't need 25 carries to get himself rolling because he had 10 for 127 in the opener on half an ACL. So I just don't think that I don't think that argument really holds up. Jumping into Gibson and Cobb and Brownlee and the wide receiver group. Yeah. The Mecole Hardman thing, it's frustrating because on a team where Zach Wilson is your quarterback, you feel like they should find a way to just be able to utilize weapons and speed. And they're kind of dodging the question. Robert Saleh specifically was saying, well, it's a testament to Xavier Gibson. Well, Gibson's got 1 catch, 2 carries, right? Like that's not necessarily singing his praises. I get that he showed it in training camp, but he's not really shown it on the field yet. So I felt like they could have been able to utilize Hardman more. Granted, listen, when Rodgers went down, Mecole probably his role, severely diminished, but I'd like to see a little more creativity. I was a big defender of Randall Cobb. I think contrary to popular belief, especially in the TOJ crowd, I got to fall off my stance. I mean, Joe continues to say it and I can't disagree with him. Like, he's statistically the worst offensive player in the league. And there's really no reason anymore. I think Gibson should take that, should clearly take his role. I think you get Brownlee in there. I think he at least gives you some size and maybe some red zone ability to help out with that, some jump ball ability. I think you just start to see what you have because what you're getting out of some of these guys just isn't it's not it. I thought that Cobb would be able to kind of bring you that security blanket, that savvy veteran that knows where to get to the sticks and knows how to make that first down in a tough third down, but he just hasn't really shown that to date. And I think the bad obviously outweighs the good with Randall Cobb at this point.
I mean,
so my long-winded response to yours.
the one play Cobb made is when he reached for that first down. Like, he literally done nothing.
I
this
was
year.
really hanging on to that one. That one play was so great that I was really hanging on to it. I'll be happy to admit that I was wrong on Cobb. I know they can't get rid of him. Like, Rodgers has plans to return next year. That's going to be the biggest reason as to why they keep him. But they can certainly phase him
keep
out.
him next year. Like, I'm sorry,
but listen, you have to tread carefully. Rodgers is finicky. Everything is great, and I still love the guy, but he's starting to show his true colors here and there. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean,
you just have to tread carefully. If keeping Randall Cobb on the roster, but not giving him all the playing time over these guys, that's a small sacrifice to make.
Yes, but it was funny, and you mentioned this. You mentioned how Hardman's role changed the second Rodgers got hurt. In my opinion, it should have been the opposite. I think that Cobb's role should have changed, and Hardman was more involved in the offense because Cobb is a Rodgers guy. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense when you think about it in that perspective.
That's actually a very good point. Surprisingly, like I haven't heard. You're really the first person to bring it up. Like, why everyone talks about Gibson for Cobb? How come nobody talked about Hardman for Cobb? That's a very valid argument.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Hardman thing is a moot point at this juncture because he's not here anymore, and it's fine. And like, I personally, like, I don't think that it was like this epic failure. I mean, what they pay him, like $4 million, and they got a pick back. Like, he never he showed flashes in Kansas City. Granted, he had Mahomes getting him the ball, but he never was like this like superstar player or like this really he wasn't like Percy Harvin in his prime or anything. He just had a couple plays. That's it. It's not like he was intriguing because you liked the skill set and you thought that he could bring more than a Berrios, but he really wasn't this like great player. And I don't think like Gibson just yet is. And I hope that he is good. I mean, listen, I'm not going to go crazy about it at this point, but I do want to talk about Sauce and Reed because we did get confirmation from Solid this morning that they both are returning to the lineup. I thought that obviously it was weird that that Reed couldn't come back last game, and obviously the whole Sauce situation was strange because no one even thought that he was hurt. I think everyone thought he wasn't feeling well or something, and people thought that it was like I think there was a joke he had like diarrhea or something like that. But it's just funny because like we go into last game and it's a combination of Bryce Hall, who I got to give a lot of credit to. He was somebody that we were very down on, and he's held up really well the last two games. What's it called? Was it Tay Hayes or whatever?
Tay Hayes, yeah.
Tay Hayes
and Craig James. Craig James.
Listen, those guys are depth pieces. No Eccles, and now Eccles is also returning this week, which is nice. I'm excited to get Sauce and Reed back. I think it's going to be a huge boost for this defense. I think, when you look at it, they're going to be able to, make life difficult for Tyrod Taylor. I think that, when he has those guys who are fringe NFL players, on the back end, he's not going to be scared to throw, but I think it's going to shift their game plan. I don't think that they're going to try to go deep. Not that that's Tyrod's game anyway, but like just having those guys back is amazing. And honestly, Michael Carter II, I saw this like PFF stat that came out yesterday. He's like literally the best slot corner in the league right now. And he is so good. And it's like, it's unbelievable how a guy like him, was like what was he, a third or fourth round pick? I can't even remember. He's become this. Yeah, he's an excellent player. And you got to remember, the Giants like to throw the ball to guys in the slot, whether it's Slayton, I guess like Jalen Hyatt also has that ability, but he definitely plays on the outside. It's important for Michael Carter. Like, we need to make sure that he's healthy and he's going to continue to produce. I think he's the most underrated player on the team. Would you agree?
Yes. I just think slot corner is such a hard position to play. And it's one of those where you're only noticed I shouldn't say only, but you're often noticed when you're bad, like circa Buster Screen back in the day, right? He would get flagged, 19 times a game. It was awful. But Michael Carter is, quietly one of the, if not the best slot corner in the league. And yes, certainly an underappreciated and underrated player on the Jets, without a doubt. Yeah. And credit to Joe Douglas for finding this guy on day 3 of the draft. Like, that's a huge find to get someone like that, who is, to Jets today's Ray Mickens. Like, Ray Mickens was an incredible slot corner for that team for years. When you solidify that position, it does a lot of things for your defense.
Drew Coleman, great player.
Great player.
And who was the other guy that we had, Poole, who went to the Falcons? I can't remember his name. But
yes. Oh, geez.
Was it Brian Poole?
I think it was Brian Poole. He had a
Yeah,
good pick six against Oakland back when they were Oakland or Vegas.
I know.
Wherever they
It's
were
kind
there.
of crazy. Okay. So we've talked about that. Someone in the chat actually wrote about extending Huff. That's another thing that the Jets have to do. I'm surprised that there wasn't even like some sort of rumbling that they had conversations or even sent him an offer. To me, if they are making a huge mistake if they don't do this before the end of the season. I mean, I think worst case scenario, they probably franchise tag him, even though people are like, it's crazy that he'd be making $20 million. But like statistically, he deserves crazy money. Like I think you meet him in the middle somewhere, like between like basically what Carl Lawson got, maybe a little bit more on the open market. But Bryce Huff needs to be on the team long term. I know Carl Lawson is probably to get moved, like traded or released or whatever it may be. But this guy, he's our best pure pass rusher on the team. And I think he's going to explode coming out of the bye week. What do you think about Huff?
I agree. And when you get homegrown talent like this, particularly UDFAs, like you don't let them go. And if you look at like the Jets defense was top 5 last year. We talk a lot on the show about how they faltered down the stretch. And really what they did was teams could pick them apart in the middle of the field because they weren't going to attack the outside. Well, the biggest differences in this defense versus last year's defense, especially that tail end, the tail 6 games there, was Jermaine Johnson and Bryce Huff are both playing better than the 2022 versions of themselves and better than any defensive line or any edge rusher on the 2022 team, right? So they're both significantly improved. That with Bryce Huff getting on the field more and getting pressures every time he's out there is just, that's what's setting this team apart. You couple that with the improvement from Quincy Williams, Tony Adams quietly solidifying himself as you know, a good free safety opposite Jordan Whitehead, and CJ Mosley still being quietly one of the best linebackers in the game and being very good in coverage. Like that's why this defense is setting itself apart and is able to do things like shut down Philly, who is the defending NFC champion, with corners that we didn't know who they were 2 weeks ago. So yes, when you get a chance to get a guy like Bryce Huff and extend him and keep him here, I wouldn't wait for the market to dictate itself, or I wouldn't wait to give him an opportunity to test the open market. And from Bryce's angle, like one of those, you know, he's got to know how good he has it here. I would give credit to Sal and Ulbrich for, and I think Aaron Wycotton, right? He's a defensive line coach, for unlocking this guy's potential. So grass isn't always green on the other side, but from a Jet standpoint, I would lock him in early rather than later, because you want this guy in green and white for years to come. With him and JJ, who are both 25 and under, I would say. I want to say. Yeah. Like, I mean, you are in very good shape, and hopefully the progression of Will McDonald as we see through the course of this season and next, that's a scary edge group, which is a good thing. I mean, this could be the 2023 version of the Sack Exchange.
Can you imagine? I mean, they just got to make sure that they don't mess this up. And I will say that they've been very progressive in the sense of like, if there's guys who deserve contract extensions, like they did with JFM, they did it with Quinnen, I feel pretty good about it. I mean, the difference here is that now they have to think about guys like Sauce, guys like Brees and Garrett, because those guys, I mean, it's not for a little bit, but those contracts the bill is going to come, and they have to think about it more strategically. Whereas like we rarely were giving extensions to guys because the regime kept changing and we didn't have players who even worthy of those extensions. So I'm fascinated to see how this all plays out, but I really believe it's hard. I think it's hard to believe a scenario where Bryce Huff is not with the Jets, at least next year, but I don't think that they're going to mess around here. I think that he'll be a Jet long-term. I mean, it's just, you can't mess this up. Like, you have to get this done.
It's too simple to not happen. It just makes too much sense. But we've seen crazier things, man. We're Jets fans.
Yeah. Okay. So the game is obviously on Sunday, 2 days away. Jets are laying 3 points. What is your prediction about what happens on Sunday? Because I'm nervous, but I feel good, but I'm nervous. What's your prediction?
Yeah, I think I honestly think the Jets win this one by double digits.
Okay.
It's again, I don't have any justifiable reason to be scared of this game. Like on paper and everything that I've seen says the Jets match up well. Nothing about the Giants offense truly scares me. And I think the Jets coming off a bye, and I think Saleh kind of making the tweaks. He made the comment that year one, we went too hard out of the bye or into the bye. Year two, we went too soft. This year, we're going in the middle. I just have a feeling that this team is just different and they're going to figure this out. I can't see the Giants, who scored 9 and then 14, like lighting up this Jets defense. I just can't. I'm not scared of their receivers. Darren Waller scares me, but he's been hidden for most of the year.
Yeah.
Saquon scares me, but honestly, like you pointed out, the Jets rushing, rush defense. I don't think they've been that bad. I think where their Achilles heel is scrambling quarterbacks. You look at Kansas City rush for what? Let's see, 204 yards against us. How much of that was Patrick Mahomes? How much of that was that last drive that was handed to him by the officials? Same thing with Denver. A lot of that was Russell Wilson on scrambles. They did a nice job against Philly. They held him to 80 yards. Now, Philly didn't even try to run the ball, so that's another story in there. There's just not much about this Giants team on either side of the ball that really scares me. So I think that the Jets somewhat figure out their red zone woes. I think they get 2 touchdowns. I think they also get 2 field goals. I think the score is 20-9. Jets win.
Okay. I don't think double-digit win, but I do think that the Jets win. I'm going to say 21-14. The over-under is, I believe, 36.5. So it's just going under. And I think that this is going to be an ugly football game. I think just the way the Jets play, they're not this, flashy Miami Dolphins, greatest show on turf type offense. Touchdowns are hard to come by, but I do think they should be able to move the ball on the Giants. I do think they're going to be better in the red zone. I mean, I'm not saying they'll be perfect, but I do think that they will take advantage, like you said, and score some touchdowns. But I think they control the game defensively. I think they force a couple turnovers, whether it's, interceptions or fumbles. I think it's also possible, and I know people were saying this, that they get like a defensive touchdown. I just kind of feel like they're finally getting to that point where they're making those types of plays. I know it felt like forever until Quincy obviously had that strip sack and then Bryce Hall took it to the house. But I do think that this Giants offensive line, especially now that Andrew Thomas is doubtful, I believe John Michael Schmitz might be playing. But again, it's not an offensive line that they should, have struggles with, just because we've seen them dominate a lot of offensive lines. I mean, they dominated Philly's offensive line. I know Lane Johnson got hurt early in the game, but they've shown an ability to get home no matter who their opponent is. So I do feel good, but I know it's going to be closer than we'd like it to be. I think that they're going to, Saquon's going to make some plays. I don't think he's going to be held to 1 yard like he was 4 years ago. And I know he actually had said as much, that game kind of just sticks with him forever, just because, number one, grew up a Jets fan, it's kind of funny that he plays for the Giants. He grew up a Jets fan. I feel like that's not something you hear very often. But number two, it's just like he feels like that was like his worst game ever as a pro. So I think that the Jets are going to, make us feel good. And I think, just going into November being 4-3 is such an amazing thing. And I know that last year in November they were above 500, but it's just, we haven't seen it consecutive years in a long time. And I do think they find a way to get it done. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, this is, the schedule, quote unquote, lightens up. So this is an important stretch. If you can get to, if they're 5-4 going into Buffalo, I think that's good. But if they can get themselves to 6-3, if somehow they can rip off these next 3, which on paper, again, they don't scare you. You got the Giants, who we've said it. There's nothing about the Giants that really truly scare you. Now, listen, it's the Jets, so anything could happen. But the Chargers coming across country for a Monday night game. We traveled to Las Vegas, who it seems like a mess and is just whatever Josh McDaniels does out there, man. I don't know what's going on. So he's just not. If they can get themselves to 6-3 going to Buffalo, and Buffalo's a team we match up well against. I mean, even if they just play Buffalo tough, it could be a different conversation come end of November and December for this Jets team. It has a feel that it's different. And Zach Wilson playing C+ football as opposed to F- football is a big reason as to why.
It's nice.
and having, a healthy Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson, who clearly has miraculously taken a step despite everything, a step forward. It just feels different. Now, I will go back to say, we talk about the red zone things. Maybe Hackett needs to take a page out of Mike LaFleur's book and get a little creative, get a little gadgety down there, figure some things out. I think that's whatever gets us in the end zone. It doesn't matter how it looks. Just get us there.
It doesn't need to be pretty. Okay. Before we go, one bold prediction, or it doesn't have to be bold, a prediction you have for the second half of the season. I know we're basically at the midway point. I'm putting you on the spot. I'll go. I think Breece Hall ends up being a top 3 rusher in the NFL, not the AFC, the NFL. I think he's really going to hit his stride now that he has a bunch of games under his belt and he's shown the ability to break that home run. And I think we're going to see a lot of that going forward. I gave you a second.
Like
so
it.
what do you?
I really like it. My bold prediction is I think the Jets get the 10 wins.
Okay, name those 10 wins.
All right. I think I do think they win the next 3. So I think you get the 6-3 going to Buffalo. I think they lose at Buffalo. That's 6-4. I think they win the Black Friday game against Miami. That's 7-3. Oh, I think after that you only need 3. So I think Atlanta and Houston, you probably go 1-1 there. So now you're 8-4. You lose at Miami, you're 8-5, and you win 2 of the next 3: Washington, Cleveland, New England.
Okay.
And that gets you.
They got to win that New England game.
10-7. They have to win that New England.
They can't go into next year losing to New England. Like
that's they've
all in our minds.
There are so many monkeys that Robert Saleh has gotten off the back. The division wins, the beating Philadelphia. There's a couple others that I'm forgetting because as we check them off, we like forget about them. But beating New England has to be one of them. I don't care how it's done. I don't care if New England is 2-14 at that time and the Jets have a spot locked up. Throw the kitchen sink at them. You get it done. They have to beat New England.
I agree. Any closing thoughts as we wrap it up before we go into Giants week?
No, man. I appreciate everyone that has stayed with us. I know the scheduling has been a bit clunky, as you and I, like you said, personal lives have been busy,
a lot of stuff going on.
Busy, but we're excited to kind of get back on a more static schedule here and keep it with us through the remainder of the season. So should be fun.
Yes, we will try to also make sure that we get you guys a audio only that's on the pod feed once a week as well, in addition to our live shows. So thank you for everyone who was patient in this 2-week period of no shows. We promise we will be consistent going forward. If you have not, make sure to subscribe to our show on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google Podcasts. Just search Turn on the Jets Live. You see the logo that if you're watching right now, you see it in the right corner. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel for youtube.com/@BadlandsTOJ. You get this show, you get clips from Badlands, you get it from all the other shows on the Badlands feed, including Buck the Trend and also the other guys. And obviously, last but not least, make sure if you have not already, you become a Badlands Patreon member. Best premium Jets content. The guys have been crushing it. And plenty of shows. Seems like almost every day there's a new podcast, whether it's War Room, it's Film Room, Buck the Trend, other guys for the general show. But it's great stuff. We appreciate everybody who tuned in, and we'll talk to you guys next week.